welcome to the Double Blind Magic Hour, where we get into what is going on in the world of psychedelics, from insider baseball drama within the rapidly unfolding psychedelic movement to the latest news on research, politics, and beyond. Today we're joined by Zeus Tipado, a very interesting humanoid. We were just joking about that word. Also a journalist and a PhD candidate in neuropsychopharmacology with a specialization in psychedelics at Maastricht University in the Netherlands. He is one of my favorite people to talk to, so I'm very excited about this conversation. Hey, Zeus, thanks for being here.
Shelby, what is up? What is happening with you? Been forever.
Did you know that there is one phase of sleep that almost everyone fails to get enough of? And this one phase of sleep is responsible for most of your body's daily rejuvenation, repair, controlling hunger and weight loss hormones, boosting energy, and so much more. I'm talking about deep sleep. And if you don't get enough, you'll probably struggle with cravings, slow metabolism, premature aging, or even worse conditions. Why don't most people get enough of this one most important phase of sleep? A big reason is magnesium deficiency, because over 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium. And magnesium increases GABA, which encourages relaxation on a cellular level, which is critical for sleep. Magnesium also plays a key role in regulating your body's stress response system. Those with magnesium deficiency usually have higher stress levels, which negatively impacts sleep as well. Now, before you go out and buy a magnesium supplement, it's important to understand that most products out there only have 1 to 2 forms of magnesium, when the reality is your body needs all 7 forms of this essential sleep mineral. That's what makes Magnesium Breakthrough by Optimizers unique. Magnesium Breakthrough contains all 7 forms of magnesium designed to help calm your mind and help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. For an exclusive offer, go to buyoptimizers.com/doubleblind and use promo code DOUBLEBLIND during checkout to save 10%. What's going on with me? I just took 2 months off.
Ooh.
So that was really, really necessary. Trying to practice what I preach, because we don't always do that in the quote unquote psychedelic industry.
Yes. Take some time, recache, energize, and relax.
What's going on with you? You said you were just in Croatia talking about psychedelics and doing DMT?
Yes. I was doing all of that, all of those combined. Yes, I was in Croatia. I was doing a presentation about my research, and I was hanging out with friends. I was kicking it and partying and experiencing love, happiness, and the boundless energy of everything.
So talk to me. So for those of you who are wondering what the heck this podcast is going to be about, if you didn't read the headline, which we'll put on it after this is recorded, today we're going to be focusing specifically on Zeus's reporting on DMT and an op-ed that he published on Double Blind about whether or not DMT aliens are real. So stay tuned for whether or not DMT aliens are real. But first, I just want to ask you, because I'm genuinely curious, Zeus, what the heck is going on with psychedelics in Croatia?
Everything. Apparently, the access is really sort of out there, or like available to every person. People have the complete understanding what they're taking, what they're putting in their bodies and their brain, and people are really into the vibe of experiencing with their brain and their consciousness. So, shout out to the Croatians out there for, bringing me in for a bit.
So is there, like, you say they're widely available, what does that mean? Like, are there kind of like wannabe dispensaries the way there are on the Venice boardwalk, or if they're just like people are just selling them freely, or what's going? Yeah,
no, so they aren't sort of sold freely, but the people that I was with was definitely, they had quite a bit of substances that they shared with everyone. So it isn't for sale at all, but the people out there seem to understand what they're taking in and what they're bringing into their brains and consciousness. So yes, so very short, it isn't for sale. There aren't dispensaries, but the like scene out there is very interesting, very underground.
Yeah, the psychedelic literacy is high, so to speak. Yeah,
Yes.
Michelle Luke, who's a contributor to Double Blind as well, actually now Double Blind's culture editor, was
Oh,
just in Hungary for like a kind of wannabe Burning Man sort of thing, and I think I
Azora.
think yeah, I think it's so interesting in particular to think about the usage of psychedelics in former Soviet countries,
Mm.
because a lot of people don't realize, like, they don't think about the fact that the Iron Curtain fell in 1989, right? So there's literally only been one generation of people who have been living in these countries not under Soviet rule, and that really impacts like the entire outlook, uh, the cultural outlook, and it sort of like lives within the buildings and the blood and the consciousness of the people in that region. So anyway, I'm really interested in all of that, and definitely digressing right now.
You're
But
digressing, but it's fun. It's all good. It's all good.
okay, so let's talk about DMT. The question of the hour is: are DMT aliens real?
Is that an actual question that you're posing to me, or is that like,
It's an actual question that I'm posing to you, and I'll provide a little bit more context,
please provide some context?
which is that which is that whether you've done DMT or you have not done DMT, if you've been reading about psychedelics, looking at Alex Gray's art, I don't know, just reading articles on Double Blind, then you've probably heard of this concept of a DMT elf or a machine elf or a clockwork elf or an entity, or people use all different kinds of words for these beings that seem to appear in the DMT realms. Now, let me be specific. There are many different DMT containing plants and animals that exist. Actually, DMT exists in the brain. I'll let Zeus talk more about that in a moment because I'm not a neuroscientist. But it's to say that when we're talking about DMT, we're talking about NN-DMT. We're not talking about ayahuasca. We're not talking about changa. We're not talking about 5-MeO DMT. We're talking about NN-DMT, which is usually what people are referring to when they say, I did, quote, DMT. And this is the substance in which people often report seeing the similar sort of entities, aliens, elves, whatever you call them. And a lot of people, when they're under the influence of DMT, are convinced that these entities are real and that they have some kind of universal, profound wisdom to share with them. And when Zeus went on our Instagram and said, actually, that may not be true, I think we lost more Instagram followers than we have ever lost for anything. I'm not joking, including really controversial pieces that we've published on politics and indigenous wisdom and all kinds of stories that you would think would be more hot button issues. So we really wanted to give Zeus the time to explain this ghastly theory that he has.
Yeah, guys. So that's very well put. Very well put, Shelby. Yeah. So are the DMT aliens real? Uh, the answer is real as in what? Like, are they actual things, actual beings that exist on some different plane of existence or reality? No, that's ridiculous. Anyone who thinks that is just absolutely ridiculous. DMT aliens, it's a product of taking a substance that produces visual experiences. That's really all it is. And I think the idea that people are having the same experience under DMT, I'm kind of skeptical, but let's just say that that is actually a thing. It doesn't necessarily like say that these things or these people or these entities are actually real. We're just having a very similar experience, a similar visual experience. And I think to believe that there are entities out there that exist, it doesn't pass like almost every single scientific theory out there. It doesn't pass the Occam's razor, law of parsimony. It's just you're endlessly complexifying. You're just making something so complex that it doesn't have to be that complex. It's very, very simple. You have a brain. We all have brains. We're all human beings, despite our vast cultural, you know, differences. All these differences that we have the same brain in our heads. And if we take the same substance, we could have the same experience. How the taste of like fries are like salty to a person from like Indiana or Iceland or Virginia. It's just as very, physiological experience, and so is taking DMT. We perhaps see entities and faces, but that's just the brain trying to assemble information in a way that's like understandable.
Hmm. So you're saying you're skeptical that people are seeing the same entities. My understanding is that part of how we verify that people are having similar visions on psychedelics, and I'll name that people see allegedly elves and aliens on DMT, but on other psychedelics like ayahuasca, for example, people all around the world, all across time and cultures who have never spoken to one another see jaguars and serpents, allegedly, right? And that the way that we confirm that people's visions are similar is through art. That's often what Alex Gray has said is the purpose of his art, is that, it's really hard to validate your psychedelic experience when it's something that's just happening internally. But if someone is able to represent it externally and then you're able to look at it and go, that's what I saw, that sort of proves the universality of the vision, whether or not the vision is based in some kind of entity that like actually exists outside of the person's consciousness.
I mean, does it validate it, or is it just really cool art to like, look at? I
Well,
mean,
it validates it if it looks the same, if you're like, that's what I saw.
but does it actually look the same? I love Alex's art. It's fantastic, but I haven't seen any of that stuff in any experience I've ever had in my entire life with any substance. It's fantastic art for sure, definitely, but is it a validation? I don't think so. It's cool. It's trippy. Yes, for sure, without a doubt. He's a fantastic artist. But I think validation in the visual experience can be seen in sort of, a person talking about their experience. Their brain correlates. What's happening in the visual cortex. Can we see the actual activity in the visual cortex? Yes, we can. Will it validate a person's experience? Yeah, if we see similar activity, but we really don't see similar activity. Everyone has a very unique visual disposition when it comes to their psychedelic experience, and that's from a lot of things. That's from a lot of priors. If a person was raised in a certain cultural background, if they're Christian, if they're Buddhist, if they were abused as a kid, if they were privileged as a kid, a person will have a different experience based on their priors, their background. So I don't think that validates art validates a person's experience, but it's definitely cool.
Did you know that there is one phase of sleep that almost everyone fails to get enough of? And this one phase of sleep is responsible for most of your body's daily rejuvenation, repair, controlling hunger and weight loss hormones, boosting energy, and so much more. I'm talking about deep sleep. And if you don't get enough, you'll probably struggle with cravings, slow metabolism, premature aging, or even worse conditions. Why don't most people get enough of this one most important phase of sleep? A big reason is magnesium deficiency, because over 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium. And magnesium increases GABA, which encourages relaxation on a cellular level, which is critical for sleep. Magnesium also plays a key role in regulating your body's stress response system. Those with magnesium deficiency usually have higher stress levels, which negatively impacts sleep as well. Now, before you go out and buy a magnesium supplement, it's important to understand that most products out there only have 1 to 2 forms of magnesium, when the reality is your body needs all 7 forms of this essential sleep mineral. That's what makes Magnesium Breakthrough by Optimizers unique. Magnesium Breakthrough contains all 7 forms of magnesium designed to help calm your mind and help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. For an exclusive offer, go to buyoptimizers.com/doubleblind and use promo code DOUBLEBLIND during checkout to save 10%. So for those of you who don't know, Double Blind began as a print magazine, and it's still at the heart of what we do. I spent my whole career as a journalist before starting Double Blind, reporting on psychedelics, cannabis, and drug policy more broadly for Rolling Stone, Vice, LA Weekly, Quartz. I did just about everything in journalism. I worked at CBS News, covering breaking news, a major newspaper, small media startups, and if you haven't heard, journalism is in crisis. But we started Double Blind anyway because we believe in the value of good journalism journalism to educate and hold stakeholders accountable. We saw what happened in cannabis. Pioneers who put their lives on the line to get patients access to the medicine they needed, getting left behind because they didn't have the capital to compete in the newly regulated market. We've seen what's happened in mental health care and healthcare more broadly, whereby millions of people are suffering, don't trust their doctors, can't afford proper care, and just don't know what to do to get well. In our print magazine, we feature essays, investigations, photojournalism, and much more by world-class journalists who are going everywhere from the ayahuasca tourism industry in Peru to laboratories at leading universities. We're supporting people like you on their journey with psychedelics, and we're covering this movement as it unfolds. This is all made possible by our members who, in exchange for their support, get direct access to psychedelic experts to help them on their journeys of healing and growth, workshops, and a subscription to our beautiful print magazine. Subscribe today at doubleblindmag.com/membership. Okay, I hear you. And at the same time, I want to push back a little bit, which is here I go. I'm pushing back a little bit.
Push
for
back.
those of you
Let's
not
do
watching
it.
on YouTube, he made a face.
Ah.
So maybe the DMT aliens or machine clock elves or whatever the heck they're called don't look exactly the same, but still people who have never spoken to one another who also don't have the privilege of quote unquote suggestibility, right? Like they've already read articles on Double Blind talking about the concept of DMT aliens, do see similar entities on the same psychedelics. So let's talk about ayahuasca for a minute, right? The first time I did ayahuasca, I was in a yurt in Joshua Tree, because of course I was.
Of course.
And I had never heard the concept of grandmother ayahuasca presenting herself as a snake. I hadn't seen art about it. I knew very little about the plant medicine community. But that night, I saw visions of these. It kind of gives me the creepy crawlies to even think back on that vision. But I had visions of all of these. They looked like mechanical, really thin, silver worm snake kind of like beings that were all interweaving with one another. And the next day I woke up and I said it was the craziest thing. I had this vision all night long of these snakes. And then the people in the ceremony proceeded to inform me that, oh yeah, that's the thing. People see snakes. That's grandmother ayahuasca. She's like showing herself to you. So how do we explain that?
Well, we explain that by saying we are all humans and we took a similar substance and we had a similar experience because we are all human. It doesn't say that there's a person that lives in some different realm showing you things. This is a very religious way to look at a very sensory experience. It's just that you've had a sensory experience under a substance named ayahuasca. And also your setting could probably influence what you actually see. I'm sure your whole setting was very ritualistic, lots of like chanting, drumming outside. The environment was like by you, close to you, probably on the ground. So to have a experience that seems like it's from the earth, probably because you were by the earth, your setting was earthly, But if you had this experience while you were in a laboratory, then that may be interesting. Setting affects your actual experience. So I think that you had a very profound experience for sure, definitely. But to believe that there's some external plane of reality that you accessed, I think it's not.
I hear you. But we're already taking off. Look, I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate here.
Please.
We're taking off the table that for a moment, just for a moment, that the snake is grandmother ayahuasca, which is some universal mystical being that exists outside of my brain. We're taking that off the table. We're just trying to explain why snakes and jaguars? Because I hear you. We're close to the earth. There's drumming. So what?
Mhm.
How many images can we come up with that might represent drumming and feeling of the earth? But the snake and the jaguar too. I mean, the snake, you might say, okay, I was in Joshua Tree. There's snakes in the desert. There's no jaguars in Joshua Tree.
Okay, there's no jaguars in Joshua Tree for sure, but I mean, did you experience one? Did you actually see one? Did other people see one? Does every single person see snakes, jaguars? Not every person sees
No, but a
this.
lot of people do in environments where those things do not exist. People have experience. I was in Topanga at a ceremony because, of course, I was, and someone
Mhm.
turned into a jaguar. Turned
Okay.
into a jaguar, had the experience of embodying the spirit of the jaguar. Granted, that person probably did have some kind of suggestibility at play because that person had drank ayahuasca before and was probably familiar with the imagery and symbolism of ayahuasca. But I'm just trying to understand from a
Hmm.
neuroscientific standpoint.
Yeah, so a lot of it is probably expectancy effect also. I mean, if a person tells you you will have an experience where you turn into a snake or a jaguar, or that you will have an experience where you will connect with some, ethereal entity that's going to grant you some earthly privilege, like, transforming into a cat or a jaguar or seeing a snake, then if a person tells you this, or if there's a certain culture around this, then of course you will have a experience that embodies this sort of thing because you're being prompted to. You're having an expectancy effect. But you did tell me that you didn't have an expectancy effect at all. You just took it and you had this experience of snakes. But does every person have an experience of snakes? The answer is no, just like how every person that takes DMT doesn't have the experience of entities or elves. Perhaps you have the experience of seeing faces. That could be a definite thing also, but perhaps that isn't an actual face, but you're taking visual information that's being placed in front of you and assembling it into a face because that's what people do. That's what our brain does. Whenever we see a object and a thing underneath, we turn it into a face. You can look into any sort of plant, any tree, any wall, any sky, any cloud, and you will be able to find a face in that. So the fact that a person can embody or see a face or see a jaguar or a snake in something that's very visually ambiguous is a relatively easy thing to do. In fact, that's the way our brains are sort of assembled to do that.
I want to pivot the conversation a little bit.
Yes, please. I know I'm being pretty
because
antagonizing.
well, that's why we love you, Zeus. We wouldn't want you any other way. So we've clearly established that you don't believe that the entities and the visions exist in some external realm. And I'm sure our listeners and our viewers will have all kinds of things to say about that. But I want to ask you, if they don't exist in the external realm, do they still provide value? Like if they are, coming with teachings and wisdom and revelation, so to speak, which is part of why I think although you'll have to tell me in the comments of this episode, why people are so upset by the idea that they might not be real is because a lot of times they come with wisdom, so to
Hmm.
speak, and we want to believe that this wisdom is true.
So the wisdom can be true. I mean, the fact that, the things that you're seeing don't actually live in some external plane, they're still real to your own perception. You're definitely experiencing these entities, you're having conversations with these entities, and you're actually, getting information. But I think the problem is that people tend to underestimate the power of their own thought process and what their
Mm,
brain's capable of. And people almost have to externalize information that they give themselves in order for them to actually accept it.
I see.
You have to almost say, oh, this sort of insight didn't come from myself, it came from some other alien that told me this. But in actuality, perhaps it's you just working out something that you've been trying to for a very long time and you actually found a big insight. You don't have to externalize your own inner progression. You can just embody it and accept it that you came up with the actual answer to whatever problem you had.
Interesting, interesting. So it's like people don't trust themselves or people don't trust their own capacity.
Yes, people don't trust themselves, but they do trust talking entities and aliens.
And I think okay, again, not a neuroscientist, not a psychologist, just a journalist that's, kind of hypothesizing over here, but it seems like humans have a tendency in general to want to seek things outside of themselves. They want someone else to tell them, like, this is the right decision, or, this is what you should do. It's hard to, like, kind of sit with yourself and just say, yeah, like, I know. And I know on some deeper intuitive level that this is like the right thing. And I'm just going to move in that direction.
Yes, it is frightening to be beholden to your own thoughts and ideas and be left with what you have within you for sure, definitely. And just overall, people seek you know they seek others to help them out, whether it's like yogis, whether it's like supervisors, mentors. They try Instagram influencers. Yes, yes. People are looking for that sort of quote to propel them over to their next step, or some self help book or some course in whatever. But in actuality, a lot of these answers rely within yourself. And so I understand why a person will take a powerful substance that, helps them visualize other things. And then this sort of inner belief comes out as an external being. And then this external being tells you what you already sort of suspected about something. And also, I want to say this. Here's a great test to tell you that whatever DMT entity experiences within yourself is there hasn't been a single entity experience in which a person has gotten insight, like actual sort of insight that falls without sort of their understanding. So, for example, like, if some entity helped a person solve some, impossible problem or science theory or math theorem, that hasn't happened. There hasn't been a entity that handed us the blueprint to build a device to clean the air of the ocean. It's always been stuff like love everybody or love yourself, or these concepts.
Well, okay, we have to push back on that a little bit,
Go on.
because what about, like, I mean, isn't most of the great music of like the 60s and 70s classic rock era, like a lot of it, and maybe even the iPhone, to be attributed to psychedelics?
Well, I mean, perhaps I would hope so, but that's a completely different thought process. Like, to have your processing of sound change based on the fact that you're under a powerful substance is a thing that is scientifically proven to actually happen.
Yeah,
like that
synesthesia
does happen. Yeah, people, there's an increase in divergent thinking when a person is on substances. So yes, I mean, can psychedelics help creativity? It looks like it can. We do research on that here, actually, and it appears that it can. But going from taking acid and playing a guitar riff to having an entire conversation with some, hyper intergalactic entity, that's a lot. That's a huge step.
Zeus, there's so much more to talk about here. I'm so grateful for everything that you've contributed to Double Blind, including being the teacher for our Introduction to Psychedelics class for anyone who is interested in learning more about taking their first steps into macrodosing. And I just, I'm grateful for the path that you've walked. Your perspectives are really valuable and interesting because, we have researchers, we have journalists, but we don't have a lot of people who are at the intersection of the two. So I just hope that we can keep the conversation going. Is there anything else that you wanted to share specifically about DMT realms and aliens today?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. And I would say that if you want to follow my research, then follow me on Instagram, Twitter, TIPADO. That's my last name, and my website's TIPADO.com. That's my last name. You can follow all of my research, my DMT research that I'm doing out here. It's all right there.
Sweet. Well, I'm definitely going to encourage folks to do that if they are DMT nerds and want to dig more deeply into the realms and the research behind them. Thank you so much for being here today.
Shelby, thank you, and continue to slay.
I'll try. Have a good one.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you so much to everyone for listening. We really appreciate your support, time, and attention. If you want to read some of our incredible journalism on the fascinating world of psychedelics, including some articles written by Zeus on our website, we have so many free stories at doubleblindmag.com. We work with absolutely amazing journalists and photographers who travel all around the world, interviewing indigenous stewards of plant medicines, researchers, therapists, politicians, you name it. And it's all made possible with the support of our membership, which comes with a subscription to our beautiful print magazine, access to a private community of psychedelic lovers, workshops with psychedelic experts, discounts to our classes where we teach you how to grow mushrooms, and so much more. So we hope you'll consider subscribing at doubleblindmag.com/membership, or you can check out the link in the show notes. If you're interested in hearing more conversations like this one, you can check out doubleblindmag.com/magic hour, or you can stream this podcast on whatever platform you use, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. You can also find us on all the social platforms at Double Blind Mag. I want to give a shout out to the amazing folks at Human Content who are producing this podcast and helping make it possible. They do a lot of great podcasts other than this one. So if you're an audiophile, you can check them out on Instagram and TikTok at Human Content Pods. Thanks again for listening. I am your host, Shelby Hartman. Special thanks to our guest, Zeus Tipado. Our executive producers are Aaron Corney, Rob Goldman, Shanti Brooke, and Alex Field from the Double Blind team, who also edits the show. Our engineer is Jason Portizo. Our music is by Oma. To learn about our Double Blind Magic Hour program, disclaimer and ethics policy, and submission verification and licensing terms, you can go to doubleblindmag.com/magic hour. Now let's take you out on Ganesha by Wah. Thanks for watching. And if you're thinking, gosh, I really need more Double Blind Magic Hour in my life, well, you can start listening now by clicking on that playlist button right over there. New episodes are out every Monday, so please subscribe and join us each week on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.